If you thought the awful tragedy yesterday would do anything to change the approach the Department of Homeland Security is taking in Minnesota, you would be wrong. Shortly after an ICE agent shot and killed 37-year-old Renee Gold in her car, masked armed Border Patrol agents, led by the so-called head of CBP, a man named Craig Bavino, entered the grounds of Roosevelt High School in Minneapolis during dismissal time. They began tackling people, handcuffed 2 staff members, and fired pepper spray at bystanders, according to Minnesota Public Radio. Some of these bystanders captured real-time disturbing video.
Oh! That was a grenade!
Guys, don't antagonize them. They literally just killed someone.
Don't antagonize them. They literally just killed someone. After that raid, Minneapolis schools canceled classes for the rest of the week because nobody wants their kids to be a target. Of course, that leaves the parents of Minneapolis having to arrange childcare for an entire school district. One Roosevelt High School official spoke anonymously to NPR about how ICE conducted himself at that school. They don't care. They're just animals. I've never seen people behave like this. Senator Richard Blumenthal's Democrat from Connecticut. He's been investigating the use of force by ICE officers since last August, and he joins me now. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
The Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, which you're on, did an investigation. It released a report in December on the use of force and the kind of reckless dragnet that ICE has undertaken, NCBP. You say that the Trump administration is seeking to build a nationwide paramilitary force with vast resources that lawlessly detains citizens based on its own whims, an effort which has a number of unfortunate and obvious historical parallels. How do you think what we've seen in Minneapolis in the last 24, 48 hours fits in with that?
What happened in Minneapolis was preventable and predictable based on what we found in our report, interviewing 22 victims of this kind of escalating, indefensible violence, which involves U.S. citizens being detained, being dragged from cars, being injured and denied medical care, being denied access to relatives, is an example of the lawlessness and recklessness we're seeing on the part of ICE. And what we're seeing now, what you just showed in that video, smacks of a cover-up. If the top officials of our government were really interested in the truth, they wouldn't be prejudging the investigation. They would support an independent, objective investigation, which is what I've called for, with state and local police.
Do you think that jurisdictionally, your former Attorney General for the state of Connecticut, jurisdictionally that that local police, local law enforcement, state or local have jurisdiction here, should be able to investigate this?
Of course they do. And in fact, as a former federal prosecutor, as well as a state attorney general, federal FBI and other law enforcement should be welcoming local and state police. They have resources, expertise. They know the community. They have trust in the community. They were on the scene first, local police, to secure the crime scene and collect evidence. So what is happening here in real time definitely smacks of a cover-up, and I think will just further undermine the credibility of whatever investigation is done. And the kinds of errors, legal errors, that are being articulated by top officials, like this issue of no jurisdiction, or the vice president saying there's absolute immunity, which is absolutely wrong, I think really betrays what they are supposed to be doing.
We have seen DHS, whether CBP, ICE, HSI, or others, conduct themselves in a way that seems, for lack of a better phrase, kind of post-constitutional. And I think the conviction they have is that the constitutional protections that American citizens enjoy are not enjoyed by people who are not American citizens, and certainly not enjoyed by people here outside of authorized status. Of course, it's a fuzzy area in terms of what the Supreme Court says about that. But even today, the vice president said they were going door to door. I thought to myself, well, you can't go door to door in America. That's like, I mean, that was true back in, we fought a revolution in some ways in 1776 over this. What has to be done to bring this entire agency that's only been around for 23 years, back onto constitutional footing?
Well, Congress does have the power of the purse. And the vote today on the War Powers Resolution indicates to me that maybe, and you and I have discussed it before, Republicans are growing a backbone. But more importantly, we need to elevate and highlight what's actually happening. That's why the investigation that I am conducting as ranking member of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, I think is important because it documents with additional videos. The one that you just showed is only the latest example that I think will be powerful with the American people.
One of the issues here, too, is a credibility issue. I did not read the statement the Department of Homeland Security put out today about the shooting in Portland. And again, we're waiting for details because it included a set of allegations about the individuals who were shot that, frankly, I just don't think I could responsibly share. And I say that, because I just have seen too many times them say things, particularly in the aftermath of an incident, that have proven to be false. Is that an overreaction on my part, or in your investigation, have you found this same crazy gap between what they say after an incident and what turns out to be true?
There is that gap, and it is wider now than ever before, and it's part of their MO. In almost every one of these 22 separate instances that we documented, we found that the reaction of ICE was, in fact, to try to discourage people from doing videos. In fact, they attacked them physically. They denied that anything wrong was done. They alleged there were injuries to the ICE agents. Yep. It is a pattern.
Or were assaulted, right?
Exactly.
Senator Chris Murphy, I've been reading this tweet where you said it's crazy for us to vote to fund DHS unless we get some restraints. There's also news today that he will propose a sweeping reforms, including requiring a warrant for arrests, banning masks during enforcement operations, requiring Border Patrol to remain at the border after an ICE officer killed a woman in Minneapolis this week. Are you open to those ideas from your fellow Connecticut Democrat?
I am not only open to them, but I would support many of them. For example, masked agents, unidentified on their uniforms, in unmarked cars. And think of how that 37-year-old mom of 3 children reacted to that collection of ICE agents coming to the door of her car. That kind of intimidation and the need for legal restraint ought to be part of our exercise of appropriation of power. As I indicated before, we have the power of the purse.
Yep. Senator Richard Blumenthal, thank you for joining us here.
Thank you.